Chapter 1. The Vampire Alpha King, written by Maya Lara. Lola SPOV.
Red gleaming orbs, watching me with such a morbid fascination that I couldn't help but stare back. That was what I saw in my dreams, in my nightmares. Those were the exact picture that stalked me through my sleep, and into the bright youthful morning glow. I thought nothing much of it. I had always had weird strange dreams that I sometimes believed to be premonitions of the future. However, this was not just a premonition, this was truth. I stayed content, submerged in the thick veil of smoky darkness that engulfed me. I didn't know how long I had been here, didn't remember how I ended up in this void. Yet, here I was, floating, free of life, of worry and problems and stress. Then I felt it, a sort of dampness, a lick of vast cold that was enough to pull the dark away. Suddenly, the fog was clearing up, light was piercing through, blinding me with its harshness. I clung tightly to the darkness, hoping it would take me away with it. I wasn't ready yet. I wanted more time here, by myself. It's time, that tiny voice inside my head whispered. It's finally time to meet him. My wolf howled, and I shook my head ferociously. She may have been ready to yield to her gift from the moon, but I would bow down to the vicious king. I would never submit to my mate.
Lola! Lola! Darling, please wake up! Lola!
My mother's desperate pleas wrenched me back into reality. I shot up, coughing harshly with such force that my entire body stung. I felt her hand on my back, rubbing it and soothing me, felt the cold wetness seeping out from the rags still pressed against my forehead. My body was smushed into one side of the musty old couch. My dad refused to throw out, my legs thrown over the side. A scent drifted into the room. It was masterful, delicate, intoxicating. I found my eyes drifting rapidly around the room, searching for the source. They settled on a man, a towering giant that almost stood at 7 foot. His hair was mused in dark raven tousles and his lips were pouted, with his fragmented amber eyes emitting a sort of smoldering intensity one couldn't shy away from. A jagged scar ran down the length of his cheek and yet did nothing to destroy the imbalance of his ragged handsomeness and perfect nature of his beauty. The scar invoked a strange sense of involuntary anger inside of me. A familiar face rushed into my view. Adam, my boyfriend, was now sporting an ugly bruise under his left eye, his lips swollen and crusted with blood. Normally, he was a sight to be graced with, naturally blessed with thick blonde hair that fell to his shoulders and baby blue eyes that made your heart clench. However, now, he looked more like the Walking Dead than anything else. Taking my hand, he squeezed it.
Baby, are you okay?
Before I could reply, a snarl ripped through the air, one I had most definitely heard before. I found myself once again drawn to the giant, whose eyes gleamed bright red. Oh fuck! I felt my heart kick into overdrive. It was him, my stalker from my dreams, the monster in my nightmares, the man who caused my plunge into the darkness. On instinct, I curled up in a ball and shuffled as far away as I could from him. Adam's hand dropped from mine, and he turned to face the giant with a seemingly threatening stare.
You're scaring her.
He snarled. The giant's eyes turned pitch black and then back to amber. Something that resembled hurt morphed over his face. He stepped back into the corner he inhabited and stared down at the floor, ashamed. My wolf whined inside of me, desperately reaching out to him. Suddenly I remembered what had preceded my fainting, what had caused my plunge into the dark.
Mate.
He growled, causing the trees to shake before him as he stared directly at me. His red eyes were piercing my soul, and then suddenly everything turned black.
Lola.
I turned at the sound of my mother's voice, the past memory diminishing into nothing. Her hand set itself on my lap and she smiled, though it didn't quite reach her hazel brown eyes.
That man is your mate, Lucien Rossi, hybrid king of the vampires and werewolves.
No, 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 no. Not even the moon is this cruel to have paired me with this monster. He was a killer. I had heard the stories. Everyone had. The way he brutally tore apart an alpha for just looking in his direction the wrong way. The way he killed an innocent woman to torture her mate. The way he pillaged villages and small packs that refused to comply with his demands. The way he hated witches. Oh God, he hated witches. Fuck. My wolf was silent now, despite feeling the pull of the bond. I knew she feared losing her counterpart more. The other part of me. The part that caused people to quake in my presence. The part that I fought so long to hide. My witch side. I was born half witch, half werewolf. I guess in some ways, that made me a hybrid too. I glanced up at him, and found his eyes pinned on me, assessing my panicked and wary expression. Although there was slight frustration lingering beneath his tyrannical front, there was no hatred, no sign of murderous revenge. I calmed my breathing down, focusing on exhaling deep long breaths. My mother seemed to know what I was thinking, and I could tell from the slight crease of her forehead that she was worried too.
Can I have a moment alone with my mate?
He bit the words out, more of a demand than a request. Adam started towards him.
Absolutely fucking not.
Adam! My voice carried across the room. Lucien's blistering red eyes dimmed, flickering back to amber. His facial features softened at the sound of my voice. I was glad to know I wasn't the only one succumbing to the sappy nature of the mate bond. Adam, please, can you give us a minute? He tried to argue. Alone, please. It's just a minute.
Fine.
He snapped, sending Lucien a less than threatening stare, before storming out.
Baby, are you sure?
My mum whispered. Lucien refrained his growl, respecting the fact that she was my mother. For some reason, that made me smile internally. It's just a talk. I'll be fine. The room fell into an ominous silence as she placed a tentative kiss onto my forehead and silently left the room. The harsh clock of the door closing set me back another minute. This was my mate, not just a king, or a killer, or a witch hater, but my mate. We were destined to become fated souls, and yet, I felt hesitant. I felt scared, panicked, alone. Lucien stepped forward, causing me to still. He lingered in his next steps, debating whether or not to proceed. He stepped back instead.
You're afraid of me.
Again, a statement. Glancing up, I caught his amber-glazed eyes. Can you blame me? A mirthless chuckle left his throat.
I don't suppose I can. Everyone is afraid of me.
My wolf whined, desperately seeking to comfort our mate. That sounds very lonely. He seemed taken aback by my answer, like he was expecting some sort of agreement or hated spew. I'm sorry about before. Being afraid. That's not necessarily in my vocabulary, and I was judging you based on the king aspect, not the fact that you're Lucien Rossi, although that was quite daunting. I could saw the shadow of smile cross his face, his eyes narrowing slowly, as his lips tilted up, and I couldn't help but smile back.
You're beautiful.
He blurted out suddenly. I laughed as a red sheen covered my cheeks. Thank you. So are you. I blushed harder as his smile grew. A comfortable moment of silence settled in. Maybe he wasn't that bad? I had heard the stories, the rumors, from my brothers. I knew the possessive nature of the mate bond, and I thought Lucien would be ever worse, but, if anything, he seemed calm, relaxed.
Your name is Lola?
Willow, I corrected, even though I hated my real name. My birth name is Willow, but everyone calls me Lola.
Well, I like them both. Lola Rossi fits quite well.
I choked, my eyes growing into wide saucers at the prospect of marriage. The door suddenly burst open, splintering at the hinges, and Adam came storming in. My mother rushed in behind him, her eyes sending me an apologetic look.
That's enough now, baby. Let's go.
Adam's hand clasped around my wrist. A feral growl ripped through the air, and watched as Lucien hauled Adam back by the collar. Adam flew back, slamming into the wall. Oh shit. I clasped my hands over my mouth, as rushed over to him. His forehead was sporting a nasty gnash, his eyes watery from the fall, and he clung onto my arms like his life was depending on it. I glanced back warily at Lucien. His eyes were no longer the fascinating amber had grown to like. Instead, the vicious red had taken over him and began to storm over to us. Lucien, no. I placed my hand out and he stilled. I noticed his ragged breathing, puffed out chest, sharp canines extended, and wondered how the hell he was managing to control his wolf like this. We stared at each other for a silent moment, gaze unwavering, and displaying a sort of powerful intensifying I dared not to disrupt.
What the hell is going on in here?
I quickly broke away from him and looked back at the doorway. My father stood with his canines and claws on full display. He assessed the situation, noticed the look of sheer panic on my face, and opened up his arms. Immediately, I fell into them, entrapping myself in the warm familiar hold. Somehow I wanted this nightmare to be end and continue. I wanted Lucien to forever be the man who haunts my dreams. But I wanted the fighting, the violence, the prospect of my mate hating my kind to disappear.
She's mine, pup.
Lucien growled with a vicious fueling. Adam had no choice but to whimper, curling back against the wall in face of a powerful alpha and king.
No, she's not.
He managed to bark out, but his words barely carried across the room.
Enough!
My father bellowed. His eyes sternly fell upon my mate.
You're in my house, King Lucien. You wish to speak with my daughter as your mate, and that is your right. However, it is also hers too. Adam, leave.
What? But...
Leave!
My father's voice erupted into a shattering awe. I flashed Adam an apologetic look. Before he scampered out, my mother shut the door as best as she could, and turned to face us with her arms crossed. She sighed.
This was my favorite room.
Lucien immediately stepped forward.
I'm so sorry. I'll pay for everything, I promise.
That's very kind. However, I'm more concerned about what you believe is going to happen next.
She'll leave with me tonight.
He stated calmly.
What the fuck? My daughter isn't going away.
I praised my father silently, wincing as Lucien's deep growl sliced through the air. My father stayed unaffected.
He two of you have just met. Not to mention my daughter has fainted. She needs rest and time.
Is that what you need?
My head turned to Lucien, realizing he was addressing me.
Time? Because you're my mate Lola. We were destined to be each other's other halves, and my people need their Luna and Queen.
Queen? He sent me a bewildered look, but the prospect of me being anyone's queen was really just ridiculous. I mean, I was envisioning tiaras, crowns, ball gowns, heels. I couldn't be a queen. Hell, I was 19 years old. I had a life to live, places to visit, people to meet. I always imagined myself tracking the Andes Mountains, and accidentally bumping into some hot hiker who would offer to buy me a drink afterwards. We would hike together, drink, have hot sex, and then suddenly I would realize he was the one, not my mate, the one, and we would go on to get married and have bunch of adorable kids. My life would be trouble-free. Lucien sent me a sharp glare, his eyes narrowly assessing me as though he knew exactly what I was thinking.
I'm king. It's natural for my mate to be queen.
After a silent moment of pause, he nodded curtly to himself.
5 days. Myself, my beta and my men will require rooms.
Rooms? I don't know why I blurted that out. I guessed my mind was still reeling from the revelation that I could be a queen.
Yes, rooms.
He smirked wickedly.
Unless you would rather I share with you.
I gaped at him openly, a red tint shadowing my cheek. My dad released a protective growl.
Absolutely not.
No boys in my room had been a strict rule ever since I brought Adam home once to meet my parents. It had never affected me before because I never had that burning desire to take Adam up to my room, and yet, with Lucien there was more. One seething look, even his masculine low growls ignited some sort of fiery passion deep inside of me, something I yearned to explore.
I'll go inform them others.
Lucien said causally, ignoring my dad. He turned back around and flashed me a wink.
Remember 5 days.
How could I forget? In 5 days, I would be forced to say goodbye to the only life I've ever known and leave my mate, the king of vampires and werewolves. What the hell could go wrong?
Chapter 2. Lola's POV.
A sharp pain sliced against my joints every time I took a step, and I knew it was because of this whole mate thing as well. My wolf was more active. She was practically begging me to let her out, but I couldn't. Not right now. Not whilst my mate was sleeping within meters away from me. Not whilst my body reacted to him in ways I had never imagined. The first thing my horny as would do is mount him on the spot. He's an alpha male. He wouldn't be able to resist and would shift as well just to fuck me. I did not plan on losing my virginity by being mounted by a wolf. I stared at myself in the mirror after I had brushed through my hair and washed my face. I always thought I had been pretty. I had a nice symmetrical face and boys never seemed disgusted by me. However, I wasn't one of them girls who stuck people by their beauty. I wasn't beautiful. I was just average. So, why I was paired to one of the most devastatingly handsome men in the world? Fuck knows. Maybe the moon did it as a cruel joke, to flare up my well-rounded insecurities even more. My eyes were pretty, round and doe-like. I was born with hazel irises, followed by rich mahogany locks that fell straight no matter how many times I tried to curl them. Apparently I had hair to envy. It was thick, but to me that just meant heavy. My cheeks still carried some baby fat and there was a slight bridge to my otherwise flawless nose. A few freckles dotted about and a faint scar hidden beneath my hairline from my first time using magic. I was slim-figured with few curves outlining my body, and my breasts were nothing to fawn about. Adam once described them as being the perfect handful. I didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or not, so I just kissed him and hoped he forgot all about them. What the hell would Lucien ever see in me? He was a king. Through and through. I was nothing but a freak of nature. No king wanted a half-witch, half-werewolf mate. Sighing, I threw on a hoodie and I walked outside the door. My body smacked face first against something hard, further adding to my blazing headache. Then the familiar tingles erupted all over my body, and the feel of smooth flesh ran under my hands. My palms were flat against a solid chiseled chest, and I watched, panting with desire, as they ran up, over his hard pecs, grazing the slope of his collarbone. A growl emitted from his throat. I could feel the harsh vibrations rumble underneath my palms and glanced up at him, stunned. Lucien was watching me with a tender curiosity, lust pooling amiss his amber-flecked eyes.
Lola.
He said my name so tensely it caused my body to thrum.
Unless you want me to fuck you against the wall, I suggest you drop your hands.
They lingered for a spilt second, the mate bond causing me to seriously consider the alternative. Then suddenly common sense came flooding back in, and I dropped my hands, stepping back. I could practically feel the disappointment lingering around him. Clearing my throat, I forced myself to meet his sullen gaze. My words became entangled inside my throat as I stared at him. All of him. Scars were rippled over his bronze skin, embedded deep into the contours of his thighs and running over the length of his shoulder. A thin towel was all that covered his lower half, and even that was on the brink of falling off. I could practically see the length of hard erection through the thin white material. He smirked.
See something you like?
Holy fuck. I don't think anyone had ever spoken to me like that before, not with such illicit undertone underlying their braw's words. Finally, I managed to tear my gaze away. Breakfast is it at 9? You should probably get dressed. All I could hear was the sound of his heavy footsteps getting closer towards me.
Why? Does this make you uncomfortable?
Of course it makes me uncomfortable. You're practically naked.
And you're a wolf. Shouldn't you be used to nudity by now?
A crass comment crossed my mind, and I looked back at him. I flashed him a smug smile. You want me to see other males naked? I mean, I could call Adam up right now and the two of us could. His deep growl cut me off. The sound was threatening, aggressive, violent, and yet all it did was make me laugh. He cocked his eyebrow at me.
You're not afraid?
Why would I be? You won't hurt me. I stunned us both, but the certainty in my voice, because deep down, I knew he wouldn't hurt me. He couldn't. Anyways, I'll see you downstairs. I hurried past him, but his arm shot out to snatch mine. I tried to shrug it back, but Lucien tightened his hold and stared down at me.
Break up with that pup.
Who? Adam? He nodded tersely, causing me to scoff. Who says you get to make any decision like that for me? Nevertheless, demand me to just comply to your every whim.
I'm your mate.
And I'm yours, I screamed, sighing. I took a breath to calm myself down. Look, I plan on breaking up with Adam. It's not fair to him or you, but I don't like you ordering me around. Next time, ask me, and we can discuss things like this like civilized adults. A paused silence lingered between us, until finally he sighed.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I smiled, and he let go of my arm. It's okay. Turning to leave, he called out my name again.
You look very beautiful today.
I looked down at my old worn-out jumper. This man was most definitely crazy.
My pretty wolf.
He murmured quietly. What? He smiled.
I said my pretty wolf. I quite like that nickname.
Then he strode away without another word.
Have you spoken to him yet?
I shook my head at my mum's meddling, fighting to hide the smile that threatened to break out on my face. Mother, it's the morning. Can we please not?
He's your mate. You only get one of those. And I want to know every single detail.
I raised my eyebrow at her.
Every single detail?
My father spluttered, sending his coffee flying everywhere.
Lola, don't. You're still in my house, Missy.
Missy? I sighed. Look guys, I'm not a child who has to tell their mummy everything. and I am definitely way too old for childhood nicknames.
You're right.
My father stated to my surprise.
You are older now. You are your own woman. I respect that, but in my mind, you will forever be the little girl I chased around the garden, read bedtime stories to. You will always be my little girl.
I ran up and hugged him, forgetting all about my lonely bowl of cereal. I love you, Dad, I mumbled against his chest.
I love you too.
He pressed a feathery kiss to my temple.
Hey, I still want to know if anything big happens.
Pulling back, I smiled knowingly at my mother. I promise you'll be the first to know.
A
deep voice stated, clearing his throat. We all glanced towards the doorway and I flushed knowing Lucien had practically witnessed everything.
Would you excuse me a moment to speak to Lola in private?
My parents, clearly taken aback from the politeness in his voice, stood there stunned. Of course, I interjected, giving them the signal to leave. My mother snapped herself out of her stupor first, before yanking my father out by his arm. With the loud thud of the door slamming shut, we were alone, again.
You're very close with your parents.
He stated openly. I nodded, grabbing my dish to wash it up. He followed me, leaning back against the counter to watch me. They've been my everything my entire life. My brothers as well. I hope you can meet them before we leave.
Your brothers are the alphas.
He paused for a moment.
Is it true that they share a mate?
A wolf having two mates was almost unheard of, nevertheless twin alphas. That's correct. Skylar is amazing. She's been through so much, not just because of her nature but because of my brothers. They were idiots for a while, fucked her around.
But she forgave them?
I nodded.
And what is her nature? I mean, I've heard rumors, but...
She's half witch. I studied him meticulously, waiting for his reaction. This was it, what I had been afraid of all this time. If Lucien didn't accept me for who I was, how could this ever work?
A witch, do they know?
I frowned. Of course they know. Turning of the tap, I spun around and crossed my arms over my chest.
They're still with her? I believed all alphas deemed witches to be dangerous vile creatures.
Ouch. That stung. I fought the tears that threatened to prick my eyes. Skylar is one of the best people I know. You shouldn't label others based on what some witches have done. It's like saying wolves are all savage murderers.
We are.
So I am? I'm a savage murderer. I'm not like you. I can't kill someone and then look the other way. I haven't killed, ever, and I don't plan on killing. It's a sin. It's cruel and it's what
monsters do.
His voice was so quiet it barely carried. Yet, still I heard it, and alongside it I heard the lingering pain. The door suddenly slammed open.
Bitch, how could you not tell that you found your...
Lucien's vicious growl cut off her words abruptly, his stance turning threatening, as his glowed a deep bloody red.
Don't speak of my mate like that. My mate!
He'd claimed. He'd called me his. In all my life. I don't think I've heard such words to make my heart flutter and break all at the same time. Lucien's it's fine. It's fine. She's my friend.
Best friend.
Sabine murmured meekly. His growl ripped through the air again. Hey, 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 I cupped his cheeks, forcing his bleeding eyes to meet mine. Calm down. It's okay. It's okay. My voice seemed to soothe him. I watched as he inhaled deeply, drinking in my scent. His eyes flickered back to amber. His canines retreated and his face developed its angelic hue again. He buried his cheek against my palm, and then opened his eyes. My heart stilled, every nerve in my body fully aware that I was suddenly becoming entranced by his melodic gaze. There was just something about the way he looked at me that caused me to become enthralled.
I'm just gonna...
Sabine called out, whistling lowly. I snapped back to reality, where I had just met this man less than 24 hours ago and had a boyfriend that I was yet to break up with. Don't, I called out, I mean just, without glancing up at Lucien. I quickly crossed the room and pulled Sabine aside. My eyes met Lucien's for a passing moment, and he tilted his head slightly in a small nod. I still see the pain that lingered in his eyes that I doubted many other could see. I wanted to help him, relive him of his demons. I couldn't do that until I cleansed my own first.
What the hell? Do you know who that man is?
I rolled my eyes. Sabine always had a flair for the dramatics. Of course, here it comes. He's my mate. Lucien is my mate.
You call him Lucien? Holy shit. Things are moving fast. Anyways, Why the hell did I have to find out from Bella? Do you know how utterly annoying she has become since she found out first?
I'm sorry. Yesterday was a bit of a blur. I passed out, then had to deal with Lucien and Adam. Oh shit, Adam. I forgot about him. Me too. I'm going go break up with him. It's only fair. I owe it to myself and Lucien to try and Adam could find his mate someday. It would have never worked.
That boy is crazy in love with you. All the boys are.
I snorted, and then stared at my best friend. Her mocha-colored skin was flawless, and her tight curled ringlets framed her chiseled face perfectly. Every boy wanted her, never me, and I was fine with it. I liked hiding in her shadow until Adam decided to sit next to me in chemistry. That's when everything changed. He was only boy who never stared at Sabine. He only looked at me, and I treasured that. You're beautiful, Sabine.
So are you. Did you see how that man was looking at you? Baby daddy vibes definitely.
Sabine. I quickly glanced back, only to find nothing. Lucien was gone. Disappointment flooded through my chest.
You like him?
I shrugged. He's my mate and he's different from any male I've ever met before.
He likes you, Lola. I saw it in his eyes. I know what everyone says about him, but give him a chance. Lucien could be your one for life, Lola.
The problem was, I already wanted him to be.
Chapter 3. Lola's POV.
Okay, you can do this. He's just a boy. He's just a friend. He's just your boyfriend. Your first boyfriend. First kiss. Oh God, how the hell am I going to do this? Adam is sweet and kind and possessive, but in the way that every girl wants their boyfriend to be. He was so good to me, and even though we both knew this day would come, I didn't realize it would hurt so much to just end things.
Hey babe.
Adam greeted with the same smile as always. I cringed at the word, like I never had before. My wolf was irked by the affection, craving only our mates. Hi, I pathetically whispered back. We sat down on the long oak bench just outside the borders of my house. I couldn't do it in my house. Not with all the people. Not with Lucien prowling around the corner. The least Adam deserved was privacy.
What's wrong? You look upset.
As he reached out to stroke my cheek, I couldn't help but move back. He froze, clenching his jaw. I'm sorry. I buried my head into my hands and sighed. Everything is just so confusing right now and I'm so scared.
Of what?
Everything. How I feel. How I'm supposed to feel. You. Him. Moving.
Wait, you're moving?
I nodded solemnly. In 4 days.
Thor? That fucking bastard.
He made to move towards the house, but I gripped his arm and tugged him back. Don't! Adam! He's my mate!
So?
His eyes flared pure black, the way mine did when we were about to shift. Dropping his arm, I recoiled and the harsh sound of his voice. We both said that if we ever found out mates then we would end this. We would give our mates everything and try.
That was before.
I sighed heavily. Before what?
Before I fell in love with you.
He snarled, my heart still deep inside my chest, and fear flooded in, as I took sight of his sharp elongated claws and canines that threatened to push out. Adam, you don't love me.
Yes, I do.
He didn't. I knew Adam like the back of my head, and had always known that one of the reason he chose me and not Sabine is because I'm the alpha's daughter. I didn't care because he liked me as well. I didn't care because he wanted me. But love, our relationship was never love. It was barely lust. We were clear friends trapped in a relationship we should have never have been in. Adam, I warned, slowly standing up to meet his stance. This is not love. This is not what you deserve. One day, your mate will find you and it'll be the best day of your life and you will thank for ending this now. As I turned to leave, his hand shot out to grab my wrist. I winced at the sharp metallic tang that arose in the air and the burning sensation embedded deep into my skin. Adam stared at her, blood dripping from my forearm, and dropped it rapidly, claws quickly retracting. I looked up at him, warily stepping back from the boy I hardly recognized anymore.
You can't leave, Lola.
He threatened with a menacing growl that followed. With that, he shifted and launched himself into the deep forest before me.
Lucien's path.
I sighed as I rummaged for the heavy suitcase again. Trip had fucking stolen my favorite shirt. Again. I was going to kill the bastard.
Hey, Rumi, what's up?
Grabbing him by the shirt, I pinned the annoying cretin against the wall, causing it to shudder against his weight. Where the hell is it?
I swear to God it wasn't me.
A growl slipped free from my throat. my canines protruding to the brink of pain. I could hear his pulse, listen to the sound of the blood pumping through his narrow veins. Fuck, I really needed blood. Trip, don't fucking mess with me, I'm starving. His eyes drew wide as he took in the glaring red of my irises.
Okay, it's behind my suitcase. I was planning to wear it tomorrow.
I dropped him, and turned at the satisfying thud of his body hitting the floor.
Ow.
He groaned. I smiled in satisfaction and dug through the pile of abandoned clothes behind his suitcase until I found it. Checkered plaid, red and black. It made me appeal more as a lumberjack than a king, but sometimes I wanted that change, that sense of normalcy. It was why Trip was my best friend. He was the only guy who had the balls to steal my shirt. There was Vlad too, a vampire I'd grown up alongside, and with Trip we completed the perfect trio. The three of us were brothers in arms, the only family we needed. A werewolf, a vampire and a hybrid, proof that the species could live among each other. Witches were the only thing we weren't ever going to add. Witches were evil spawns of God who caused nothing but havoc and destruction. The fact that my mate's sister-in-law was one didn't bode well with the fact that they were my sworn enemy. I was yet to meet her, or her mates, and I couldn't say I was looking forward to the interaction.
Are you going to wear it to impress her?
I gave him a sharp glare.
Lola.
He puckered up his lips and battered his eyelashes. I grabbed his suitcase and hauled it into his chest. Shut the fuck up and clean the room. My eyes drifted over to the small portable mini fridge I took with me everywhere. Crossing the room, I opened it and pulled out a pint of blood. One should do it. I needed to save my rations if I was going to stay here for 5 days.
You good?
Trip asked, eyebrows raised, as I threw away the packaging. I wasn't fully satisfied, but the hunger was kept at bay. I nodded deftly. Good. How do I look? I was planning on speaking to Lola, taking her somewhere more private. For some reason the prospect scared me. I did hope for more romantic setting, perhaps a moonlight dinner, or a 5-star restaurant, but this place lacked etiquette. The most they had was an old crusty pizza shop within pack borders. Everything else was miles away and I wasn't ready to be out in public with my mate yet. Not until I had claimed her.
See you tonight.
Trip waved me away, laying back against the headboard and flicking on the football game. As I walked down the narrow halls, I let my eyes skim over the myriad of pictures that lined the walls. Most were art, but some were family photos taken years ago. My mate as a child, a baby, a young teenager. There was one of her in that mud at what I'm guessing was prom. She's smiling brightly, looking beautiful in her stunning gown and flashing the brightest smile I had ever seen. Lola really was the woman of my dreams, if I ever had any. The only thing to visit me during the night was nothing but bleak darkness or flashes of my haunting past. The light she mirrored had never even touched me before, until now. I paused, feet stilling as the strong stench wafted down the halls. Blood. I could practically taste the metallic tinge of it, simmering on my taste buds. My eyes glowed red, causing the monster inside of me to snarl at the prospect of food. I forced him back, burying him into the deepest, darkest parts of me, and followed the scent. It led me to her room, Lola's. Her sweet scent was mingled between the strong tinge of blood that only got stronger as I pressed down the handle and pushed it open. It creaked, widening to slowly for my liking.
Lucien.
There it was, the soft sweet sound that whispered harmonically against my ear. My eyes dulled their vicious red, switching back to the amber shade I inherited from my mother.
Pretty wolf. What?
And then I saw it, the deep red stains over his dress and the flimsy white cloth that she had pressed against her oozing wound. She was hurt. My mate was in pain. Her bottom lip was trembling as if trying to contain her wrath of tears, fingers trembling whilst she gripped the tiny needle between her fingers. Oh baby, I wanted to wipe away her tears, hold her body in my arms and carry her to bed. I wanted to be her rock, and instead I was forced to hang back, seeking permission. What happened? She sniffled and set down the needle, her fingers stilled.
It was nothing.
It was never nothing. She glanced up at me with those big brown doe eyes that caused me to melt.
Can you help me?
I nodded softly, afraid to disrupt the fragility of the moment by talking. The bed dipped down as I perched beside her, close enough that our arms were brushing but still maintaining enough distance that she felt comfortable. She flinched as I touched her skin. The electric spark hit us both in the chest, igniting the sacred bond that the moons gifted between us. I slowly peeled back the cloth, revealing 4 nasty embedded marks that ran deep into her skin. This wasn't an accident. Someone did this. Someone hurt my mate. An involuntary growl slipped free from my throat, and I instantly regretted it, but her hand reached out and sought mine. She squeezed and smiled gently.
It was an accident.
She was defending someone, Even if they didn't mean to do it, they hurt her because they were angry. Was it him? Silence filtered through as her response. I cracked my neck, sighing. It was him, wasn't it?
Yes, but I had just broken up with him and he was really angry.
That isn't an excuse. How could she be defending this bastard? He hurt her, physically maimed her, and yet.
He didn't mean it. I've known him for years, Lucien. I broke up with him for you. Just please don't make this harder than it already is. I want to forget about it.
I nodded curtly, and then focused in on the bloody wound. Why isn't this healing? Lola shifted nervously in her seat, raising my suspicions.
It takes longer for me to heal.
I cocked a brow. Why?
I don't know. It's just a birth defect or something. My mother isn't exactly a normal wolf. She had abilities that other don't, and maybe that's why.
My mate couldn't take a long time to heal. She was going to be my queen. We were to have hundreds of enemies, hundreds of bastards who would hurt her, to hurt me.
I do heal. I just take a little longer. It'll be fine tomorrow. I just wanted to stitch it up so I don't bleed everywhere.
Okay, I smiled and grabbed the needle, stitching the wound as she requested. Her hovering stare was one of awe. I guess she didn't think a king was capable of stitching. I've been in a few fights before, you know, fist fights, bar brawls, and my mother taught me all the necessary skills in life from a young age.
It's just strange. You're so normal and yet.
A king? She stared on. Yeah, I get that a lot.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have.
It's fine. I am a king. You will be queen. I gauged her reaction and my wolf didn't like the displeasure in her eyes at the word. So, anything you would like to know about me? I thought it best to change the subject, knowing that this was our only normal conversation. She would have time to adapt.
Your eyes were glowing when you opened the door. Is that because you're a vampire?
Kind of. She winced as I tied the stitch, gently, raising her wrist. I pressed the lightest kiss against the wound and watched her blush. My red eyes are inherited from my father. They symbolize my royal status and power. The brighter they glow, the more powerful my emotions in the moment.
They were pretty bright.
I'm hungry, I admitted.
Well, I can make you a sandwich after this or we can order pizza.
I placed my hand on hers and she fell quiet. For blood, my vampire side is virtually unquenchable with the packets I use.
Oh, right. You drink blood.
Fuck, she was cute. A blush of embarrassment crept over her cheeks now. We can talk more about it later. For now, I think you should know my nickname, or rather the name I prefer.
Which is?
I smirked. Luca.
And how were you given this nickname?
My mother used to scream it across the playground whenever I did something I wasn't supposed to, and it's sort of just adopted from there. My friends call me it, my family, and now I want you to as well.
Luca.
Her lips curled up into that beautiful smile.
I love it.
My heart fluttered at the sight, something it never did, and I knew that I wasn't leaving without her. I couldn't live without her. She was mine till the very end.
What did you think of the breakup? And Adam, will he let Lola go peacefully? Thoughts on Luca and Lola?